so early. You guys want to get some coffee or something?
Can I get a cup of coffee? Black? Can't you see we talking? White?
Even little kids in Mexico drink coffee.
Well, I'm not a little kid in Mexico, okay?
That is the best coffee I've ever tasted.
A damn fine cup of coffee.
You want a cup of coffee?
No coffee.
Coffee drinker, huh?
Maybe we could grab some coffee?
Coffee! Coffee, 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 coffee!
God damn, Jimmy. This some serious gourmet shit. Me and Vincent would have been satisfied with some freeze-dried Taster's Choice, right? And he springs this serious gourmet shit on us.
Good morning. Don't adjust your screens because Gerry is not here, and I am, in fact, not Gerry. This is Danny the Dork Knight stepping in to guest host for today's Morning Coffee with Gerry True Crime Edition. Joining me today is this guy right here, Martin. Say hi, Martin.
Good morning, everybody.
Hey. So what we're doing today is a little different. We're going to participate in the chat, but here in a little bit we are going to play a presentation that Tom O'Connell, who was our guest last week, the pissed off prosecutor, former federal prosecutor who worked on several high profile cases, including the one we're going to go over today, which is the kidnapping of Kevin Wynn, Las Vegas mogul Steve Wynn's daughter. This happened back in the day. I don't know, 20, 30 some odd years ago, 30 years ago. Gosh, I'm getting old. But before we get into that, Tom is in the chat today. Hi, Tom. Also want to say hi to Bill Barclay. Thank you for coming by. I'll relay the question to Gerry. Zacharat 315, good morning. My sweet Croatian concubine is here today. Anima Confusa, good to see you. Martin, I already said hi to you. Martin. There's a pissed off prosecutor in the chat. That's Tom in the house. We got King Sport Cal. Hey, King, to follow up on something from yesterday, you fly Cece out there. You can keep her, bro. I'm just kidding, babe. Just kidding. She's supposed to be joining us soon. I don't know if she's here. Also want to say hi to Das Wolfen. Hey, Das Wolfen. Thanks for joining us as always. Penny J, my mom. Hey, mom. Gary's #1 fan. And Monkey Jeebus, one of Gary's 2 favorite monkeys. And I believe that is everyone here. Yes, Anima, 30 years ago. Or, well, 29, but 30. Anyway. So, at my age, I keep confusing. I keep wanting to think the 90s was 20 years ago, but it is what it is. So last week we had Tom on. It was more of a like getting to know you session with him and Gerry, and fun conversation. Learned a lot. Well, I mean, I didn't, but Gerry did. I've known Tom for a very long time now, like 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. So what we're going to do today, the reason I wanted to show this today is this podcast is 3 hours, but it's broken up into 6 parts. And I highly recommend you guys check it out. It is available anywhere you can get your podcasts and just search for Vegas Fed, Spotify, iTunes, all that stuff. Or you can go to vegasfed.com, which I just put in the chat for everybody to check out. But what we're going to do is we're going to play here in just a few minutes. We're going to play. Basically, he condensed the 3-hour podcast down to about a 50-minute presentation that he gave live at the Las Vegas Mob Museum. And this was back in January of 2021. And so we're going to watch that to get ready for next week, because next week on True Crime Thursday, Tom will be back on the show So will Gerry. And Gerry is going to basically interview him about this case because it was a big deal. And today we'd love everybody to participate in the chat. We got Tom here to participate in the chat, hopefully answer any questions you have, or if you want to, take a watch and save your questions for next week when he will grace us with his presence. Is it just me, or does he kind of look like Jerry Garcia? I know that might be too old a reference for some of you, but hey, D Bud Martin, I see that you're in the chat. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully we get some more people to tune in and check this out. I know it's a little bit different. We're going to be a podcast watching a live stream, but we can talk during it. I can pause if there are any pressing questions or things like that. Martin, do you have anything to add with your little Xbox avatar there?
Oh, not yet.
Okay. We ever gonna see your beautiful visage on the screen, or do you just not? Are you like a criminal? You're hiding from the law? Is that why we never see your face?
I've told you before. All this is fake. My face, my voice. I'm an AI. I'm an artificial intelligence.
You are the sexiest sounding AI ever. You got that Ricardo Montalban swagger with that accent of yours. All right. Well, if you don't have anything to add, and I already said hi to everybody in the chat, please don't forget to give us a like. Anybody who super chats us, we will pause the video, acknowledge the super chat. Hopefully we can figure it out. Clear your cache. I know there were some issues, but I do have it pulled up. Martin, here, share my screen real quick, buddy. So here is the Vegas Fed. It is up. I know some people have been saying there have been some problems. Maybe just clear your cache. And then also his blog, the Pissed Off Prosecutor, where the most recent article is actually what we will be going over today, because this is his video, Vegas Abduction, Inside Story of the Kevin Wynn Kidnapping. Okay, you can take my screen down. Martin, there we go. All right. So we got Gerry said something about a deadline yesterday. I don't know what you mean. Where is Backdoor Gerry? Sorry, Monkey Jeebus. Gary's got some medical appointments or something, some such nonsense. I'm just kidding. It's not nonsense. It's important stuff. And he said, you feel like popping your hosting cherry. And I was like, yeah, sure. I'm down to do anything at least once. Well, almost anything. I'm not Backdoor Danny, but Gary's Backdoor Gerry for a reason.
$20 or $20.
Yeah, I'm cheap. I'm a cheap date. All right. Well, I guess we're gonna get into this then, if there aren't any questions. So Tom O'Connell, good friend of mine. He's a retired chief of Narcotics and Violent Crimes Division with the U.S. Attorney General Office in Las Vegas. Retired. He, I believe he served in Las Vegas for 13 years in that position. Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, please. And last week, yes, another cherry popped on this channel, Anima. Like I can't let you have all the fun, girl. So if you have any questions for Tom, drop them in the chat. If you want to give us a super chat, we will pause the stream, acknowledge you, and answer any of your super chat questions. But we will participate in the chat as well. So I guess without any further ado, I'll get Martin to share the screen, and I'm gonna kill the mic so you guys don't hear me while we're watching this. Martin, I'd recommend you do the same, and enjoy. Thanks for joining us.
Las Vegas, the 90s, the new Vegas. The actual birthday was November 22nd, 1989, the day the grandiose, lavish, sparkling new Mirage was unveiled to the world. The Strip had been reinvented with an exploding volcano, a dolphin show, white tigers, and sharks looming in a huge fish tank right behind the reception desk. The architect of all of it was the young, toothsome, and always tanned Steve Wynn. The naysayers said Wynn would never be able to generate the $1 million each day that would be required to keep the lights on. They were wrong. By 1993, the year of the infamous kidnapping, the Excalibur, the Luxor, the MGM Grand, and Wynn's own Treasure Island would be built. Thanks to Wynn, Vegas was booming, but his world was about to come crashing down around him.
Some of you may recognize that voice. That's Glenn Meek. It's the introduction to my podcast, Vegas Fed. Glenn was a reporter here for many years. He also was an investigator for the Federal Public Defender's Office, and he's now an author. With that, I'll get right into the crime. On July 26, 1993, Kevin Wynn, 26-year-old daughter of Steve Wynn, worked at the Mirage. That evening, she had dinner in a hotel with her parents, her sister, and a friend. At the time, Kevin lived in a condo in Spanish Trails at the corner of Rainbow and Tropicana. Next slide, please. Here's a map for those of you cartographers or just fans of maps. You can see Spanish Trails and the golf course and whatnot. My wife loves maps. Next slide, please. All right, this is a photograph of that intersection. You can see on the left the sign for Spanish Trails, and it's kind of difficult to see, but below that large sign off to your right is a rectangular brown sign that says Carl's Jr. That's going to become relevant in a few minutes. As Kevin Wynn entered her home through the garage that evening, she was met with the shock of her young life.
Well, I walked over towards the answering machine and I had several bags with me, so I was going to put them down and I was facing my cupboards and I heard something, so I turned around. And as I turned around, two men came running at me from my living room area.
These are actual audio tapes from the trial that you'll be hearing tonight. The men's faces were concealed with stocking masks. They grabbed her from behind. They spun her around so that she could not get a clear look at them. She could tell that one of them was taller, heavier, and had a dark complexion. The other was shorter, fair-skinned, and fit. And he seemed to be the man in charge. Next slide, please.
I was very scared. I was shaking. I said, what's happening? What's going on? What are you doing? And the shorter man kept saying, calm down. And it took them a while. I was shaking. And he was trying to calm me down because I was trying to, break away. And I said, what do you want? And the shorter man said to me, we want money. I said, okay, what money? And he said, we just want the casino's money. And at that point, I thought my life was over. I thought that was it because they knew who I was. And this wasn't just a random thing that I walked in on. This was something serious and they knew who I was and they had a plan.
They told Kevin to contact her father. After dinner, he had also left the Mirage and they couldn't reach him there. So she suggested that they contact him on his car phone. And she did that.
And I said, Dad, it's Kevin. I've been kidnapped. And I could tell my father was just about to say, what kind of joke is this? And I repeated myself. I said, Dad, I've been kidnapped.
At the trial of this case, Steve Wynn described that first call.
A man's voice came on the phone.
What did he say?
He said, listen carefully. We've got your daughter. Go to the hotel. Go directly to the cage, to the casino cage. Stand in front of the cage so that you'll be easily visible. And wait for a phone call.
So Steve Wynn returned to the Mirage and approached the cashier cage per the man's instructions. At the trial, he would describe how he felt at that moment.
I remember that my kneecap was shaking, and I couldn't make it stop, and my breathing was short. And all I could think of was Kevin.
This would be the first of several phone calls Wynn would receive during the night from the kidnapper's leader, the shorter guy, as Kevin described him. When the phone rang again, it was the man. He instructed Wynn to put all the cage money in a bag. First, he wanted small bills, and then there was a tense exchange between Wynn and he in which Wynn had to educate him that this wasn't a bank. He was worried about marked bills and exploding die packs. And Wynn told him, once again, this is a casino, not a bank. I don't even know how much small bills we have. They went back and forth, and Wynn decided he would pay them in hundreds. He ordered his casino cage manager to collect all the hundreds and put them in a bag. As this was going on, there was a lurid photo session occurring in Kevin Wynn's home.
I know that the first thing you and your father are going to do is try to come and find me. So I need insurance. You know what insurance is? I said, yeah, I think I understand. He says, well, you are my insurance. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to have you, we're going to take some pictures of you. And he said, and we're going to have you take off your clothes. And you're going to take these pictures with one of us. And we're going to cover your eyes with sunglasses so that it looks like you were cooperating in these pictures. And I started to shake because I thought, I'm going to have to take off my clothes and I'm going to be raped. And that's what I thought the next thing was. So I got very scared and I started saying, please don't hurt me, please don't hurt me. And he said at that point that it would all be over with if I just cooperate.
Now, beyond what you just heard, the kidnapper, the main culprit, the shorter, fair-skinned man, told her that if she or her father contacted the authorities, these photographs would be mailed to the National Enquirer. And he went on to remind Kevin of the Amy Fisher story, which, if you don't recall that, it occurred on Long Island. And Amy Fisher was a young girl who shot the wife of her boyfriend in the face, her boyfriend being one Joey Buttafuoco, who incidentally lived 1 block from my parents in Massapequa, New York. But it was a nice neighborhood. We kept this whole thing sealed for a year in the hope that we would plead the case, that Kevin and Steve would not have to testify, that this humiliating photo session would never be publicly revealed. And after negotiations failed, we proceeded to trial, and we had no choice but to disclose this. And this part of the crime particularly sickened and enraged me.
And that plan was a perverse and sick photography session in which Kevin Wynn was forced to disrobe down to her underpants and to pose with Jake Sherwood while Mr. Cuddy played director.
Steve Wynn had been ordered to have his chauffeur, Albert, deliver the money to the parking lot of nearby Sonny's Saloon. Sonny's was located about a half a mile from the garage on what is now Sammy Davis. If you look at the photo of Sonny's in the foreground, to the left, extreme left, you'll see a 7-Eleven, which will become relevant. Albert was then to go to the nearby 7-Eleven that you can see and play slots to kill time and wait for the payphones outside of the 7-Eleven to ring. Now, the next photograph will show you just how close the 7-Eleven and Sonny's were to the Mirage. That's the 7-Eleven on the end of that strip mall. And there's the Mirage before the Beatles were up on top. Cuddy left Kevin's house in his own car and picked up Anthony Watkins at the Carl's Jr. He returned to the 7-Eleven Sonny's area to wait for his delivery of cash. He put Watkins in a cab and sent him off to McCarran Airport. Back at the Mirage, Steve Wynn was playing it very cool. He ordered an armed security guard who resembled Albert to play along as if he were him. With nothing more than those orders, the guard, a guy named Charles Price, was not rattled a bit. He confidently told his boss, "I can handle it." And he played the role of Albert, delivering the money to the Sonny's parking lot. Meanwhile, Sherwood was transporting Kevin Wynn, her arms bound behind her back despite her protests, and buried under a pile of blankets in the back of her Audi to the location where she'd be left, McCarran Airport. Like her father, she kept her cool. She made an effort to pay attention to how long they'd been driving, listening for any familiar sounds, and even engaging Sherwood in conversation in the hopes that she'd have the ability to ID him by voice someday. After going up the circular ramps of the parking garage in McCarran, Kevin knew where she was. Up they went, but quickly went back down. There were no spots. The car stopped, and Kevin heard someone say no charge. It was a parking attendant who collected the ticket from Sherwood. Sherwood then proceeded to the oversized parking area, which is where Kevin would be left. In time, what seemed an eternity, Wynn and a few of his closest advisors who'd been summoned to the Mirage got the call. They raced to the airport long-term parking area. Kevin was shaken but safe when they found her in her car at around midnight. The following day, a command post was established at FBI headquarters, the old FBI headquarters on Charleston. It was a scene worthy of the movies. With nothing to go on, a huge conference room was filled with agents and cops, including the FBI SAC and Metro bosses, all crammed at a table. We were being briefed every few minutes with any potential nugget of information that might prove helpful in identifying the perpetrators. The coordination of this thing was remarkable. We had guys running in and out of the room every few minutes, bringing back tidbits of any aspect of Wynn's life that might help the case and adding it to the long whiteboard. We didn't know it yet, but the case had actually already been solved. We were just waiting for corroboration of a hunch by a veteran agent, a former Buffalo cop named George Lyford. I remember George telling me, "I just tried to think like a kidnapper." He figured if he was going to try to snatch somebody out of Spanish Trails, he'd want to look out nearby. And he knew the area. He knew that the closest public phone, this is in an age pretty much before cell phones, with a few exceptions. He knew that there was a payphone on the corner of Rainbow and Trop at a Carl's Jr. restaurant. So Lyford pulled the tolls from the 7-Eleven, that is the telephone tolls, the record of calls. He also pulled the tolls from the Carl's Jr., and he compared them. Bingo, the same number in Sacramento, California, had been called from both locations. There were also common calls between the phones and a cell phone. And again, in 1993, The U.S. Attorney's Office had one cell phone, which I had during this investigation with me. It was about the size of a World War II walkie-talkie. The one that showed up in the tolls had recently been purchased by a guy named Ray Cuddy. Then an agent showed up at the command post with McCarran Airport records. They reflected that a car registered to a Ray Cuddy was in the oversized parking area at the same time Kevin was there, trapped in her own car. So Ray Cuddy was ID'd. The Sacramento number came back to Mary and Glenda McBride, two sisters who were pretty rough around the edges. The McBrides were interviewed the following day and predictably lied. So we subpoenaed them to the grand jury for their next session. And they lied again. So we indicted them for perjury. Sacramento FBI agents, led by Chuck Riley, a real hard charger, were thrilled to put the cuffs on them later that very same day. And I actually got to watch that on the Las Vegas News, the Sacramento agents putting the McBrides in their cars in cuffs. Subsequently, a dozen of their mostly unemployed, directionless 20-something friends will be tracked down by Sacramento agents led by Chuck Riley. And what do you know? Can you guess who their new boyfriends were? A couple of gang-banging cousins named Jake Sherwood and Anthony Watkins, who had recently been in Las Vegas. Now we had all three ID'd. Next slide. Oh, you got it. Thank you. The elusive friends would also tell all about the $100 bills flying, courtesy of Sherwood and Watkins. We'd corroborate all of their purchases by subpoenaing business records. Now the search was on for all three defendants who had been identified in just a matter of days, thanks to George Lyford. Las Vegas agents quickly located Cuddy's son living in a shabby apartment he shared with his father. He seemed to be candid with the FBI, and he said he knew of two black kids that his father had flown to Vegas recently. He also said his father was on his way to Newport Beach after making some kind of big score that night. Before he left, he gave the kid $500 bills. So now the search was on a Newport Beach. Now, in any investigation and prosecution, with any business matter or, for that matter, personal matter, chemistry is important, and there are often disagreements. And in this case, this was the opportunity for my first disagreement with several FBI agents. I wanted them to locate Cuddy and surveil him. They wanted to locate Cuddy and arrest him immediately. I suggested that by surveilling him, he might lead them to the ransom money, $1.45 million. Of course, Sherwood and Watkins had some, but we didn't know the breakdown at that time. I remember one of them said to me, well, what if he splits from Mexico? And I said, well, you're the FBI, don't let him. Anyway, the SAC called the SAC, by the way, that's special agent in charge in LA, to make sure it would be smooth with him to have Vegas agents coming and working in his area. And it was decided between the two of them amicably that was fine. There's always the fear of another agency or even another office in your own agency stealing a case. That's high profile. And that was worked out too, that wouldn't happen. So the SAC, in agreeing with me, agreed that once we found Cuddy, he was going to be followed. Now, Cuddy was a Newport Beach, California wannabe. He loved living among the rich and famous. The problem was he wasn't one of them. He was a part owner of a gym, but he had had a falling out with his partners. He sued and won a $500,000 lawsuit against him, only to see it reversed. This was apparently his motive for the kidnapping. Before the kidnapping, after his time in Newport Beach, he was living in Sacramento, pumping gas with Sherwood, a young gangbanger from Gerry, Indiana. Then he moved to Las Vegas in desperate straits to live with and work for an old friend named Jimmy Kazaya, who owned American Printing on Fremont Street. At some point during that period, he came up with the idea, a way out of his relative poverty, and that would be the kidnapping of Kevin Wynn for ransom. Now, Cuddy had worked at the sports house in Las Vegas years earlier before he transferred to their facility in Newport Beach. Now that he was back in Vegas, his buddy, Kazaya, fronted the money for him to become a member. So he was hanging out at the sporting house, I believe it was on Industrial, quite a bit. Kevin Wynn happened to be a member there. And we surmise that this may have planted the seed in his head, running into her, seeing her there. So he now had Sherwood recruited, and Sherwood brought his cousin Anthony Watkins in as well. Cuddy was running around, we now know, with about $1 million in hundreds. He was spending his money lavishly and offensively. I'll give you two examples. He purchased a pair of ostrich skin cowboy boots for $2,000. And he bought a $15,000 Rolex for himself. The take had been a bit more than the $300,000 he told Sherwood it would be. Sherwood, in turn, lied to Watkins about his share. So there's no trust among kidnappers, apparently, or honor among thieves, as they say. Next slide, please. Cuddy's ultimate prize upon returning to Newport Beach, where he thought he rightfully belonged, was going to be a $200,000 car, a Ferrari Testarossa, the purchase of which he promptly began to fund, ineptly laundering money in Newport Beach. Now, he did this in a number of ways. If you listen to the podcast, there are more specifics, but he had no idea what he was doing. And fortunately for him, although not ultimately, none of the businesses in Newport Beach that were required.
Now, I just want to interject for a second. Hopefully you guys can hear me. What kind of a dumbass goes and buys a big fancy car like that, pays cash after they just committed a crime? I mean, apparently they don't know, like, I believe it's anything over, Tom, again, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's anything over 10 grand, it has to be reported to the either the IRS or the authorities or something like that. So it just blows my mind. Like, criminals are so damn stupid, or at least the ones that we hear of, like in cases like this, because it's easy to catch a dumbass, apparently. Anyway, sorry to interject. Let's get back to, hey, I wanted to, while I'm here, I did want to say hi to the Marshal and to the sensational Sherry. Oh, yeah. Well, the lovely Sherry, who showed up after I said my last hellos. Anyway, now back to our regularly scheduled program already in progress.
To fill out various IRS forms when conducting cash transactions, bothered to report it to the IRS. And I was beginning to wonder if Newport Beach might be the money laundering capital of the world. So, Sherwood and Watkins was spending hundreds, Cuddy was spending hundreds, and as my co-counsel argued at trial, they left a paper trail that would choke a goat. He's here in the front row. His name is Jay Angelo, but forgive him if he doesn't come up and speak. He's just very, very shy for an ex-Marine. Now, by now, Sherwood and Watkins were feeling the heat in Sacramento. They took off for St. Louis with the help of a friend and or relative, we're not sure, named Fred Ford III. It would be September by the time the St. Louis agents located them. Once again, their associates were interviewed. These associates, however, were completely unlike the motley crew of misfits in Sacramento. They were a bunch of middle-class suburban teenage girls who they'd met at the mall. Once again, hundreds in kidnapping proceeds flew. We dragged the naive teenage idiots to Vegas for grand jury appearances, accompanied by their less than delighted parents. Once again, we followed up on items purchased via the generosity of Sherwood and Watkins with subpoenas for business records. Between Sacramento and St. Louis, we proved up around $70,000 in spending on cars, jewelry, a motorcycle, and just plain cash awards to their pals, which demolished the false statements they made to St. Louis agents when they were apprehended, claiming they'd been in Vegas, but it was only to do a drug deal. They were each going to sell a kilo of coke for $20,000. So even if they got the coke for free somewhere, it did not and could not explain $70,000 in a spending spree. This actually made me think about the movie Goodfellas from 1990, when Jimmy Burke, played by Robert De Niro, starts whacking all of his cohorts for disobeying his orders not to go on spending sprees with the proceeds of the Lufthansa heist. I guess Cuddy didn't see that movie. Another Hollywood reference to this matter was made in the 2000 updated Ocean's 11. The Andy Garcia character, Terry Benedict, who was pretty obviously based on Steve Wynn, tells George Clooney after he's gotten away with his heist, if you should be picked up buying a $100,000 sports car in Newport Beach, I'm going to be extremely disappointed. Kind of a challenge. Well, we probably got a provable case at this point, but we, and especially Jay and I, wanted to keep digging. An additional agent was put on the case, Skip Wilkes, a young West Point graduate. Also, Sean Healy, an IRS Criminal Investigation Division agent and a money laundering expert. So they joined Mike Growney, who was a 20-year FBI veteran and himself an attorney, and Jay, who I just referenced, an experienced AUSA, a former Marine Vietnam vet, and a Navy JAG officer, and myself. Quite a formidable team, if I may say so. Next, a headshot piece of evidence came back from the FBI lab. It was a fingerprint match to Sherwood on a ticket from the parking garage at McCarran, which had been returned to him by the attendant who'd said.
So I guess he said McCarran because at the time it was McCarran, but now it's the Harry Reid International Airport. Anyway, sorry. And hi to some more new viewers, Secret Circus and Cam's Crash Courses. And Bill, I guess you stepped away, buddy. So we had Tom on last week for the True Crime Thursdays. And Tom will be back next week to talk about this case and answer any questions. This is the Kevin Wynn kidnapping of Steve Wynn's daughter that happened back in 1993. This is a presentation that condenses the 3-hour podcast down to kind of let all of our viewers know who are not familiar with the story what happened. That way, next week when we have Tom on and Gerry talks to him specifically about this case, you guys have a point of reference. So thanks for everybody who's joining us, and let's get back to the show.
No charge when he couldn't find a spot and had to resort to the oversized parking lot. Ultimately, the third conspirator, Anthony Watkins, the lookout at Carl's Jr., decided to cut his losses and cooperate. He'd give jurors the story from the inside of the plot to kidnap Blondie, as Cuddy disparagingly referred to Kevin Wynn. The case was just getting stronger and stronger.
Denny? Denny, we have no audio of the video.
What happened, Martin?
You have your audio for the video muted.
Oh, shoot. I didn't even notice. I'm so sorry. When did that start? I'll go back a little. Gotta hop. Okay, Secret Circus. Thanks for swinging by. Martin, do you know about how far back it was?
Not really.
Technical difficulties. I
I
know,
was
man.
just panicking in the back.
I apologize. All right, let's try this again.
Come on.
Can you guys hear it now?
No, it's still muted, and I cannot unmute it.
It's muted?
Yeah.
Hold up.
Your screen. In your screen sharing.
It shouldn't be. Hold up. Still can't hear that?
Nope.
Technical difficulty. All right, hold up. Let's try this again. Gerry takes a day off. I try to fill in as guest host, and I screw the whole thing up. Ugh. Let's try it again. Now it gets funny. Yeah. Let's see. Let's try this again. Share system audio. I'll back it up a little bit. All right. Tell me if you can hear now.
Constantly have fights over
We're all good.
privileges.
You can hear it?
Yes.
And it's their only contact with
Fantastic.
the outside world.
Yeah. See what happens
So I called
when
the
Gerry's
detention
away.
center.
Yeah.
Was told what had to be done.
Well, I'm sorry, guys.
Needed
Hopefully I
$100.
rewound it far enough.
The boss, Catherine Landreth, authorized it. And I got the calls. Ultimately, on a bunch of cassettes, which I listened to
Trying
at
to say
home
I'm old, huh? Thanks.
on my own time and my office's dime. And I remember it was a Friday evening, and I was listening to one of the cassettes on my now old-fashioned stereo system. And sure enough, Cuddy asked his son, "What is Wynn saying? We didn't hurt her or anything. What is he saying about the whole thing?" He was parenthetically terrified of Wynn and wanted to plead in LA, and we wouldn't permit that. We had done all the work. And he had offended this community. And we wanted him back here for his trial. So the phone calls bore exceptional fruit. Another thing with agents, federal agencies, is they're kind of competitive, and the FBI doesn't like bringing other agencies into a case. Well, I don't think I mentioned this, but Jake Sherwood had a gun pointed at Kevin when he and Cuddy entered her home. And a gun was recovered later from Cuddy. It was a .357 Magnum, and I wanted it run down. So I enlisted Terry Clark, an ATF agent, which was my practice, to bring in any agencies that could assist in the priority, the mission, which was the case, not credit or egos. And Terry was able to find a man who personally sold the gun to Cuddy, ended up testifying and pointing to him. He also got all the paperwork and said, yeah, this is the guy, this is Ray. I sold him that .357 that you found in the trunk of his car when he was arrested. Now, Cuddy filed several spurious motions, and next slide, please. We had a hearing, and it was held on St. Patrick's Day, 1994. I thought it was kind of funny, the two Irishmen were going to have a little Donnybrook on St. Pat's Day. Cuddy testified, and I got to cross-examine him, and it didn't go well for him. In fact, his false testimony that day would earn him an enhancement to his ultimate sentence for lying under oath and thereby obstructing justice. Trial commenced on May 3rd, 1994. We basically steamrolled over the defendants with a mountain of evidence. Cuddy's defense was a ludicrous one, a legal defense that the sum of $1.45 million was insufficient to affect commerce, which is an element of the federal extortion statute we'd used. There was no actual kidnapping charge because she wasn't transported out of state. The charges were extortion by kidnapping under the federal statutes. Sherwood's strategy was to lay his part off on one of Cuddy's friends from Newport Beach, Spiro Kemble, in whose garage Cuddy had stashed $500,000 in hundreds. Ignoring the fingerprint evidence from the parking ticket, his attorney would claim Sherwood was not the driver of Kevin Wynn's car that night. It was Kemble. Then things got really interesting. Again, you can listen to the podcast for the details, but if I can take a wet my whistle. It's actually water, by the way. The report of interview called an FBI 302 of that parking booth operator was interesting. She was a Cambodian immigrant who spoke somewhat broken English. And the night of the kidnapping, according to this report of interview, she said that the driver, she remembered him, was white. The problem was when we interviewed her in trial prep, we learned that that was not what she told the agent. She told us that what she told the agent was that the driver looked dark, like an Italian. Now, an Italian, to me, does not mean an African-American, but to this Cambodian immigrant, she didn't see things in black and white particularly. She said, no, I never said the guy was white. He was a dark guy, like an Italian. Well, we almost fell out of our seats when we asked her if she'd seen the defendants on TV. And she said, yeah. And we asked her, well, which one was the driver? And she said, the big black guy, Sherwood. And this was like almost unbelievable. We naturally turned that report over. And the defense was going to base their whole presentation on that. And I'm supposing they never interviewed her. But they called her as their witness. And, you know, the rest is history. Pretty obvious. That didn't go well. So the jury was out for parts of 3 days. Jay and I were, of course, concerned, but you know, on the other hand, we told ourselves we presented a massive amount of evidence for them to sift through. And maybe they were just doing their due diligence. It turned out we didn't have much to worry about. Next slide, please.
We, the jury, in the above title case of honor oath to say that we find the defendant, Ray Marion Cuddy, guilty of the offense charged in count 1 of the indictment. Verdict. We, the jury, in the above title case of honor oath to say that we find the defendant, Jacob Harold Sherwood, guilty of the offense charged in count 1 of the indictment. Herein.
They were actually convicted of all the counts charged in the indictment, which included use of a firearm and a crime of violence, money laundering, etc., aiding and abetting. Next slide, please. We promised to seek harsh sentences if the defendants put the Wynn family, and especially Kevin, through a trial. We made generous plea offers of 12 years, which were rejected. And so we filed motions for upward departure from the federal guidelines based upon the heinous nature of the crime, and particularly the unduly cruel photo session, as well as the targeting of such a vulnerable victim, Steve Wynn's own daughter. We were extremely fortunate in this case that had been assigned to Judge Lloyd D. George. As many of you may know, the federal courthouse is named for him. Next slide. Very sadly, we lost Judge George last October. He was first class, a fine judge and a fine human being. He was a Las Vegas original and a legal icon who could have written several books about his youth here, his education, his career, and his family. And he is missed. Judge George was more than receptive to our emotions. He sentenced the defendants to 19 years, Sherwood, and 24 and a half years, Cuddy, respectively.
I would characterize what you did as brutalizing Miss Wynn, her family, and indirectly your own family. Conduct was not only opportunistic, but it was, in my judgment, base and vile.
That's what he had to say for Mr. Sherwood. A few weeks later, Cuddy was sentenced. Next.
In the demeanor and the conduct of Mr. Cuddy, I see absolutely no evidence of remorse or regret except for what it may bring. There's absolutely no excuse for these things.
Well, so down came the hammer. In return for his cooperation, Anthony Watkins, the lookout, who testified at trial, was sentenced to 7 years. Glenda McBride, who also testified, to 6 months in prison, 6 months in a halfway house. Her sister Mary, 6 months in a halfway house, 6 months of home confinement. They each got a very stern lecture from Judge George, who underscored how lenient they were being treated and how harshly they could have been treated. Incidentally, all the witnesses who I'd harangued for months before Jay came onto the case pretty much hated me. So they became his witnesses at trial. Not my problem. Later, the defendant, the last defendant, final defendant, Fred Ford III, kind of a mystery man, he pled guilty. He got 2.5 years for assisting Sherwood Watkins' flight to St. Louis and spending chunks of their ill-gotten gains in the process. including purchasing a car for that purpose. Naturally, appeals followed, and ultimately the convictions were affirmed. There was a bit of drama up at the Ninth Circuit. You can listen to the podcast if you're interested in that. In closing, I have to say that both Kevin and Steve Wynn were no less than heroic throughout their ordeal, and they really were. Also, this case demonstrated how valuable federal resources can be. We at Metro and the Las Vegas FBI worked in this thing. We also had Sacramento, LA, and St. Louis agents all over it. And we were using nationwide subpoena power extensively. These are things the DA's office simply could not have done. So there's a lot more. The podcast is 6 half-hour segments, so that's 3 hours. And it was tough getting it down to 3 hours. But I'd like to thank Jeff for the invitation and Shakayla for her assistance and patience with me. I am not a
Okay, I think the sound went out again, but I think that was pretty much the end. I'm gonna push play just to make sure. Apologize for these technical issues. There you go, Martine. Okay, let me put that back. Sorry about that. All right.
She helped me put that, she basically put together this PowerPoint. So I guess there's a Q&A.
Okay. Well, I
just
guess
have one final note.
this is the end.
And that's-
Okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know, Tom, because there's like 10 minutes left, so don't want to bore the people. So, yeah, if you got questions, like Gerry said, and like Anima mentioned that she's doing, jot them down, and Tom will be live on the show with us. Gerry will be back. Hopefully, hopefully everything went well with your appointment, Gerry. I don't know if you got another one or not. And okay, good. Well, if people want to check out the video, it is available on the Pissed Off Prosecutor website. If they want to check out those questions, but I feel like we're going to basically do a Q&A with this audience next week. Maybe recap a couple things with your own words. And so if there's no questions okay, whoop. So any San Diego Comic-Con news we missed? Well, I'm not sure. I think we covered all of that. Martine, was there anything that we covered all the San Diego Comic-Con stuff, right?
I do not follow that.
Oh, what are you talking about, man? You're always on the show.
Yeah, I'm not gonna repeat all the things you have said.
Oh yeah, no, I don't want to repeat. I don't know if we missed anything, but
I'm so jaded with comics and TV and movies.
No, I feel you. The Walking Dead return of Andrew Lincoln and Michonne, maybe. I like how he used the actor's name for one and the character's name for the other. So yeah, they're doing like a spin-off show, movie, something like that. I stopped caring about The Walking Dead when they killed off Carl. I actually used to do these big Walking Dead viewing parties, and here in Vegas. And I'm not even. I mean, they were big. We did them for years, like 6.5 years, something like that. We started with the finale of season 1, and it went so good. We just did viewing parties at various locations in Vegas up until literally the episode where they killed Carl. So we made them like mini conventions. we'd have vendors who were selling things that were related to, The Walking Dead. We had the cast of Evil Dead, the musical. There. One time we even had the cast of Naked Vegas there. For example, if you can see or share the screen just real quick, if you don't mind. It's you can see here. This is one of the prints I did for one of the Walking Dead viewing parties. For those who don't immediately recognize, that's a mashup of the one of the original Evil Dead posters and obviously The Walking Dead. And a buddy of mine who used to live in Vegas, because I also tweeted this image out, replied to the tweet and showed me a picture of these ultra rare variants I did, where instead of holding his revolver and his machete, he's holding a chainsaw like Ash, and he's a zombie. Rick is a zombie in that one. And the funny story about that is I lost the file. I can't find the file. So even if I did want to print another limited run of those variants, I couldn't do it. So people like Antho who have that, because I only did a very limited run. I want to say I only did like 10 of those. Be sure to hold on to that. And I think I signed him. I'm not sure. I'll have to get with Antho. But that picture I showed you, that's from local coffee shop Grouchy John's here in Las Vegas. You can check out my art wall. And not all, but some of those prints are available for sale. And some of them are actually available as T-shirts. So if you like some of those designs and you want to rock them, you can check out my T-shirt shop. The link is in the live chat right there. And yeah, I see that, Monkey G. Yeah, draw it again. My buddy was like, I can scan it in high res and send it to you. And I'm like, nah, it's good, man. Like, let it be. It's just that much more special now. It's truly limited. Although, I've got dozens of hard drives from over the years. So maybe one of these days I'll look through them and find them. So yeah, I know that this is an extremely different format today. I was just trying to help Gerry kind of keep the train rolling while he was away. We want to keep doing True Crime Thursdays, and since Tom's going to be on next week to talk about the Wynn case, he and I thought it might be interesting to check out. No, I have not seen the Orville yet. I'm going to watch that as soon as we're done here. Let's see. I mean, can we all agree that San Diego Comic-Con was pretty underwhelming? From what I saw, yeah. I mean, yeah, but I'm also I do enjoy, I enjoyed the thing with Kevin Smith and Bill Shatner. I'm a big Kevin Smith mark, so I enjoyed his panel. There was a really cute moment with a kid when they did the Q&A, and he literally asked Kevin Smith, "Why do you drop the F-bomb so much?" And then Kevin Smith replied with a kind of a funny story, just completely laced with an excessive amount of F-bombs. Star Trek panel was what it was, mostly underwhelming. The only cool, funny, slightly newsworthy thing from that was, I guess, the crossover between Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds, which that'll be interesting.
Oh, well, never forget the Dwayne Johnson Black Adam presentation.
Yeah. So I was going to bring up the DC. Yeah, the Black Adam thing, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in full wrestler mode did an Undertaker style entrance, dressed up as Black Adam, floating in the air, shooting lightning bolts out. Henry Cavill didn't show up, but I never thought he would. My takeaway from the DC panel was the Snyderverse is back. And I've talked about that in length on a few different shows. The last one I did was with Syl Duel on his channel, and Mikey Sutton was over there, and the three of us were talking about it. So yeah, what else happened? Orville announced that they're moving their shows in August sometime to Disney Plus. Did not announce a season 4, but I don't think that season 4 needs to happen. Hey Tom, thanks for joining us. Yeah, you go watch your Highway Patrol 1959, and we will see you next week. I'm going to check out the Orville after this. North Comic Con today with William Shatner. I wasn't invited. Yeah, Kevin Smith is actually going to be at that con as well. I was a little jealous when she hit me up, letting me know she was going. That's out in. Oh yeah, you said like out in Raleigh. Yeah, I think we can wrap it up. Short show today, a little over an hour. Unless Martine, you've got something else you want to talk about. No? Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining. I hope you've got some questions ready for Tom for next week. And I'm pretty sure Gerry does. I full disclosure, I did Tom's 2 websites, and I've helped him out a lot. So I'm pretty familiar with things. So next week, Gerry will be back. He'll take the reins. He'll ask some questions. I'll do my typical trolling interjections where I think I'm being funny, but apparently I'm the only one usually. So Martin, let's do that thing that you do with like the list. Like, let me get the list so I can thank everybody. I would like to thank everyone for the super. Oh yeah, we didn't get any. No, that's my bad. Probably because we were just watching another video, and I know it was kind of dry for most of this audience. But next week, Gerry will be back. Tom will be on. It'll be fascinating, and as the weeks go on, we're gonna have other guests on Thursday to keep the true crime theme going. So Wednesdays, we do the UFO Skinwalker Ranch. Thursdays, true crime. I'm not sure about all the other days of the week, what those themes are. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. This is me popping my host cherry. Hope you guys didn't get too upset with me about the couple of technical difficulties we had, but I'm learning. This is a huge learning curve here. This is why I'm always a guest. Bye, Anima. Bye, Marshall. And I'd like to thank the people in the chat who participated today. We've got Anima Confusa, Bill Barclay, Cam's Crash Courses, Das Wolfen, D. Bud Martin, King Sport Cow, Monkey Jeebus, Penny J, my mom, Secret Circus, Socks Bulletins. Oh, I miss Socks. Hey, Socks. We still got to get together, do talk wrestling. The lovely Sherry stopped by, the Marshall, and Zachariah 315. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And I'm going to give it over to Martine to say goodbye and play our outro.
Well, I'm very thankful for everyone who bear with us today, and come see us tomorrow.
Same fat time, same fat channel. Oh, I did forget Cece, but I see her every day. So, and I'm gonna blame Martine for that because he gave me the list.
Yes,
right, everyone.
It's totally my fault.
Yeah. You just like it when she throws chocolates at me. Alrighty, well, I'm heading off to watch the Orville. So, what does he say? Get the fuck off my lawn. I think that's how he closes his show. So. Yes, Marshall, I did quote Kevin Smith. I've been watching this podcast way too long. Batman on Batman. Definitely Batman Beyond.
Y'all come Thank you.